We have got about 67 already registered, logged in. Just let a few more to join in. Okay, I think we can start now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Malaysia, or morning to some of you, depending on where you are from. First of all, on behalf of the Malaysian Palm Oil Council, I would like to thank all of you for your participation in today's MPOC Science and Sustainability Engagement Series in collaboration with the Institute of Chemical Engineers Palm Oil Processing Special Interest Group, or known as ICHEMI POPSIC. This is the 5th webinar in our Science and Sustainability Engagement Series. The focus of our webinar today is on towards digitalization of Malaysian sustainable palm oil. The palm oil industry started more than a century ago in Malaysia. Today, it has become one of the most important revenue generator for the country, contributing to about 20 billion USD annually. The industry provides job opportunities to about 3 million people nationwide, directly or indirectly. However, over the years, it has become a labor-dependent industry, especially on foreign workers. The problem has become more acute following the restricted movement of workers with the pandemic COVID-19. There has been calls to digitalize its operation to reduce its dependence on labor and remain globally competitive and relevant. While advances in mechanizing harvesting is limited, incorporating various technologies including big data, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and precision agriculture, and many other technologies across the supply chain is one way to increase efficiency of operation as well as improving the traceability of the industry. Therefore, this webinar is timely to help us assess our current practices, standard operating procedures, and probably new approaches in the palm oil industry moving forward. But before we begin, here are some housekeeping rules for both the speakers and participants. Except for Mr. Anupan and Ms. Kerr, all speakers will be given 20 minutes to make your presentation, and a Q&A session will be held immediately after the final speaker completed her presentation. To all participants, if you have any question, please use the Q&A option to post your question. You may direct your question to any speakers by specifying the name to whom the questions are directed to, or you may also post a general question. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have 5 eminent speakers to share their thoughts and update us on the latest research finding in the field of digitalization. Our first speaker today is Ms. Brittany Zajic. Ms. Zajic is a natural disaster research scientist turned businesswoman. She has 7 years experience in geospatial industry, working across both public and private sectors, including several years at the Earth Science Division at NASA. Ms. Zajic is currently a business development manager with Planet and is responsible for the development of key partnerships and research of new markets for Planet. Today, Ms. Zajic will talk about measuring sustainable supply chains through satellite imagery. Ms. Zajic, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Confirming we can all see okay?
Yep.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you all today, and welcome to the session on measuring sustainable sourcing through satellite imagery. As just mentioned, my name is Brittany Zajic, and I have been at Planet for 4.5 years now. And I'm also joined by my colleague today, Jonathan Ong. He is a regional sales manager for the Southeast Asia territory, and he will be available for the Q&A session as we progress through the panel today. In today's webinar, I'm going to introduce Planet, talk about our sustainable sourcing context, discuss current challenges, and also finally discuss how our satellite monitoring solutions today may be able to aid in some of your solutions. So for those who may not have heard of Planet before, we're a satellite technology company on a mission to use space to help life on Earth. Over 10 years ago, we were founded by launching cell phones to space, and now we're the leading provider of near daily satellite imagery and insights. And we're growing like wildfire right now, with over 20+ employees in the Asia Pacific region alone. Here at Planet, we're driven by the notion that no matter what your industry or role or geography, you can't fix what you can't see. Thus, our mission has remained the same since Planet was founded in 2010, to image the entire world every day and make that information become available through visibility, accessibility, and actionability to everyone. So this visual shows how our constellation orbits the Earth today. We have over 180 medium resolution satellites in our PlanetScope constellation, and these are capturing nearly the whole Earth's landmass every day. At the same time, we also have 15 higher resolution satellites named SkySats, also in the sun synchronous orbit. There's also another 6 of these SkySats at an inclined orbit, in which combines as a 21 satellite constellation, which allows us the unprecedented coverage and cadence around the Earth. And with this extensive amount of data and imagery, we can also apply this to numerous industries and verticals, including both forestry and agriculture, which is going to be the focus of today's conversation. So talking a little bit more about sustainable sourcing first, it's the integration of social, ethic, and environmental performance factors in what we consider the process of selecting suppliers. Supply chain transparency and traceability is also key enablers of sustainable sourcing. So with this, it's becoming increasingly prevalent as a practice for several reasons. It's important for managing risks. Regulatory bodies, investors, and downstream purchasers are more often requiring the sustainability conditions to be met, and this has become both a risk and compliance issue. It's important for meeting sustainability goals. Several members of the audience today may be affiliated with the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil and particularly aware that sustainability goals they need to meet or help others in their supply chain. And finally, for enhancing the corporate social responsibility and brand value for their consumer-facing brands. So we're seeing the importance of sustainable sourcing grow because of pressures from multiple stakeholder goals. On the consumer front, we're finding that companies' commitment to sustainability can sway product purchases for 45% of consumers. On the regulatory requirements, discussions are underway for a global framework for nature and biodiversity, much in the same way of what we're seeing with the Paris Agreement for climate change. But at a country scale, there are also numerous regulations being strengthened and emerging, as we talk about for a few examples in our couple of slides. On the employee front, there's increasing evidence that employees want to work for companies with values around sustainability. It's a key part of why I work for Planet today. And on the investor side, in 2019, 60 investors with $66+ trillion in assets under management called on companies to disclose and eliminate deforestation risks in their supply chains. We have seen leadership from BlackRock and others such as the Bank of England in this space. And furthermore, here's one recent example from July 2021. Unibail became the first South American brand to add RSPO certification, and they did it because it was a business demand from the retailers they work with. So we're hearing this all around as people and customers are coming to Planet. And furthermore, in the EU, timber regulation has been in place since 2013, and similar style regulations expected to expand into other commodities in the coming months and years. And as we all know here today, the majority of the world's supply of palm oil comes from Southeast Asia. Local regulations in these countries are also evolving towards protecting biodiversity and natural environments, and regulations are generally extending from large-scale plantations to cover smallholder farms. So what are the challenges today with meeting these requirements? Well, if you're a large corporation, tier 1 or tier 2 supplier, you may have limited visibility in what's going on in plantations. And if you're the company operating in the plantations, there's increasing pressures for you to be able to manage and communicate what is going on to other players in the supply chain and to regulators. The good news is that satellite imagery monitoring can help with these and a few of these pain points listed here. And we'll show you how in the next part of this presentation. Not doing anything about sustainable sourcing carries many negative consequences. On the regular front, between 2014 and 2019, ESG Clarity estimates that sustainability scandals cost US S&P 500 companies nearly over $500 billion a year. So let's dive into how Planet can help today. As many of us know and care about here today, just 4 commodities, beef, soy, palm oil, and timber, drive the majority of tropical deforestation. And thus, today, Planet is focusing on palm oil for several reasons. One, there's already incentives and infrastructure in place for CPG companies to track palm oil deforestation, e.g., as already mentioned, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, or the RSPO. 2, Planet has an extensive partner network with many working solutions specifically for palm oil monitoring across the world. And 3, there are also external proof points that show palm oil plantations and associated deforestation can be detected in satellite imagery, as shown through entities like the NICB data program community and beyond. So to briefly zoom out of Southeast Asia alone, this timeline notes that tropical deforestation is happening all over the world. Planet's daily PlanetScope imagery is able to provide a comprehensive timeline of anywhere in the world. This time lapse is showing an area in the Amazon from May 2017 through September 2020 of deforestation. Moving back to the right side of the globe for our next example, we're looking at a monthly mosaic, which is the composition of our daily satellite imagery into a cloudless, analysis-ready data set in Sumatra, Indonesia. In this example, we're specifically monitoring deforestation for the conversion to palm oil farms. Moving just 1 year later, you can see deforestation has occurred in several parts of the forest, again, for the conversion to palm oil. The scale of coverage and resolution of detail are fundamental to the core offerings of Planet Imagery. Discussing the potential of monitoring wildfires. In common practice, most agencies and authorities are using MODIS data, which is a NASA Earth observation satellite, to locate the location of forest fires. PlanetScope's satellite imagery can help authorities validate the location given by MODIS more accurately, especially in the remote areas or unintended areas. And what we mean by that is also further analysis of the fire behavior can be evaluated by using the same satellite imagery, wind direction, burn scar, evacuation routes, This information has the potential to help authorities to plan and manage the wildfire more efficiently. Also moving into the monitoring of agriculture, this series shows replanting of palm trees, which is specifically done roughly every 20 to 25 years. They cleared the land in July of 2019 in this example, and then in October started planting new palm oil trees. We can see the progress throughout December as well. Once we identified the initial deforestation and planting of the palm oil farms, we're also able to measure the health of the vegetation as well. So the top row of this is a visual composition as it can be shown through the naked eye, and the bottom is showing an NDVI, which is essentially band math applied to the imagery to create a normalized difference vegetation index. The NDVI for short shows healthy vegetation as green and declining health or pressure or presence of vegetation on a scale from yellow to red, indicating that a less vigorous crop canopy or otherwise different types of agriculture. We can add this index within our platform at Planet Explorer as a layer on top of the visual for better understanding and management operations of palm farms and the surrounding areas. And to discuss into some of the opportunities with satellite imagery for pertaining to optical satellite imagery in particular, cloud cover is a very important and potential concern for predominantly cloudy areas of the world like Southeast Asia. So Planet's near daily imagery revisit rates actually allows for a higher amount of collection over even the cloudiest regions, which means more usable imagery, shown in both this graphic and again displayed in this chart here with more visible numbers. Planet's revisit rate by our 200 plus satellite constellation provides up to 5 times more imagery in cloudy areas than other satellite sources today. We also have higher spatial resolution than publicly available resources, which can really come into consideration when you need a closer look at the ground of what's going on. So both our PlanetScope and SkySat allows decision makers to more precisely assess, validate, and operate upon based off of these insights. From left to right here, we have the comparison between NASA's Landsat, the European Space Agency Sentinel-2, and Planet's 2 constellations, both PlanetScope and SkySat. Higher resolution imagery can also become important when considering how it complements the existing deforestation alert systems. This is an area in Sumatra, Indonesia, where forested land was converted to palm oil production in early 2020. The pink image illustrates where the Global Land Analysis and Discovery, or the GLAD alerts powered by Landsat data, has indicated a deforestation alert. PlanetScope imagery in the green complements the GLAD with the higher spatial resolution and the temporal resolution, which improves the solutions related to earlier deforestation, land use conversion validation and classification, and the correlation to commodity production, sourcing, and supply chain assets. Such a complex solve like sustainable sourcing requires the multiple ingredients, and we recognize that satellite imagery is only one of the many. We work with an extensive network of partners in providing a more holistic solution for monitoring the plantations and fields around the world, and our modern APIs and cloud infrastructure make Planet data easy for anyone to work with. I'd like to close by inviting you all to our annual user conference this October to learn more. It is virtual and free to register. And like last year, we're putting together a stellar roster of speakers, compelling content, and networking opportunities that you can bring back to your organizations. And I'd also like to note that we have a few other content pieces on palm oil in particular. 2 more on-demand webinars and several articles and use cases of satellite imagery and agriculture on planet.com/pulse, and 1 in Asia Palm Oil magazine. And of course, for a more personalized discussion, please reach out to us at sales@planet.com. Thank you all for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Ajak, for the presentation. As I said just now, we will leave the Q&A to the end of the webinar. Our second speaker for today is Mr. Pedro Carrillo. Mr. Carrillo graduated with a BSc in Physics from Seville University and obtained an EMBA from IIST. He also attended the Personal Leadership Program at Columbia University and the Strategic Value of Custom Program at the Wharton University. Mr. Carrillo has 20 years experience in multinational company, managing business development and training activities of energy projects in Europe, Middle East and Africa, and also Latin America. In 2014, Mr. Carrillo co-founded EC2C, an AgTech company specializing in predictive analytics for agribusiness and commodity. Today, Mr. Carrillo will talk about artificial intelligence-based technology to increase palm oil yield and sustainability in Malaysia. Mr. Carrillo, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruslan and the organization, the MPOC, for this opportunity to explain what EC2C is serving in the agricultural sector. I'm going to share my screen for a presentation that I have prepared for this webinar. Please let me know if you already see the screen. Okay, well, EC2C is a mathematical company, so we do math based on artificial intelligence technology, and we apply our mathematical technology, predictive analytics in agriculture. This is our focus, business focus. More particularly for several purposes, but in this case, we're going to talk about sustainability and how we are providing solutions for increasing sustainability in agriculture, particularly the palm oil sector in Malaysia. So sustainability drivers in this conversation today, I'm going to focus on yield improvement and predictive pest and disease management. Yield improvement is important because every single hectare of palm oil need to produce as much as possible. So if we produce as much as possible per hectare, we will not need so many land to produce the supply that the global demand of palm oil needs. Predictive analytics are able to determine how to increase yield and how to even improve sustainability standards by optimizing fertilization and nutrients inputs in the field. I will explain how we do that later in the presentation. Secondly, the predictive pest and disease management is able to predict the evolution of any pest or disease in the crop, and then you can anticipate any action to fight the pest and the disease, so minimizing the use of chemical treatments and applications in the crop, avoiding the pest or the disease to progress, and minimizing the chemical inputs in the land. So this is also one of the tools, predictive tools, that we are deploying and that is useful for the sustainability of palm oil sector in Malaysia. Sorry. How we do that? As I mentioned, we base our technology in big data and predictive analytics. It's artificial intelligence, but again, this is not an artificial intelligence technology based on patterns or image recognition. It's artificial intelligence based on mathematics. So we use data, we use numbers, data that is coming from the open sources like satellite indexes. When I say indexes, it's because we use numbers that provide those satellites. So the conversion from images to numbers. We use also GIS numbers or data coming from geographical conditions in every little land that we are analyzing, and also weather data, not only historical weather to train the models, but also the forecast weather that open sources are providing. We integrate those data source with existing data coming from the farms. The palm oil farms, wherever they are located, they provide data like, well, the age of the trees, the varieties. Those are very simple data that everybody has. The yield is something that also everybody has. Either the grower or the palm oil mill that processed the crop. The management of the crop, so when the management is made, which kind of applications are made, treatments, fertilization, water use, etc. So any kind of data that is available is used in the model. If there is no all the data available, it doesn't matter. We will model accordingly to the existing data. So we do not deploy any kind of hardware or monitoring system in the farm. We use just existing data because we need the historical data to train our mathematical models. Once we have all the data sources downloaded and we have already defined the business targets, in this case, increase yield or diminish the effect of pests and diseases, we generate specific algorithms. So we adjust our technology to the specific matter that we are dealing with. So it's not a standard algorithm. We manage more than 40 different algorithms in order to optimize the solution for the specific business target. And this is algorithms that are applied to any kind of crop. You will see examples that we are managing, but of course, it's applicable to palm oil. As a matter of fact, we are already using predictive algorithms to monitor the supply and demand of palm oil globally. But besides those algorithms that could be predictive or optimization, we create knowledge. Those are not black boxes. The algorithms provide a lot of knowledge, and that knowledge is the multi-relation that we discovered between the different variables that are included in the model. So we provide predictive solutions, optimizations, but also knowledge that joins the agricultural knowledge and the experience of the grower as a mathematical knowledge coming from the data. Those are very complex multi-relations that are not simple to be extracted from experience or literature in agriculture. So this is how mathematics is improving the knowledge in the agricultural sector. And at the end, the use and the value creation of this modeling is, well, optimize the management of the crop, obtain recommendations. Now we can check why a particular grower in a particular situation and conditions produce more oil than other growers. So we can extend the best practices and make the best recommendations to others if we know and we understand the reason why things are better in a particular farm or management. And then we can also create scenarios. If we have models that are able to produce outputs and predictions out of different inputs, then we can put the other way around and create the scenarios and say, okay, if I want to have that particular output in my farm, what should I do in order to have that target? And of course, all this modeling is scalable, because if we do not have data in a particular area, we can model the areas in which we have the data and use those models in the areas where we do not have data. We do that mathematically. We extend mathematically those models, so we are able to provide solutions even in areas where data is not available. And this is happening because not everyone, and small growers, and they don't have so much digitalization yet. So we can use the knowledge and the data that is existing in other areas of palm oil production and be extended in the whole region, in the whole country. So this is something else that precision agriculture, we are talking about predictive agriculture, thanks to predictive analytics and artificial intelligence. And this is a very interesting scheme coming from Seed Insights. It's an international consulting company based in the United States. They published this some years ago. I think in 2017. And this is you can see the roadmap of integrating different technologies in agriculture, particularly coming from different sources of data, like satellite or in-field monitoring or any kind of analysis that you can do at farm level, even using different robotics that they integrate monitoring systems. So you produce a lot of data. It's true that you can extract knowledge and information out of that data, but we work at the end of the roadmap. Our technology works in predictive analytics. So putting together all those different databases and finding how all the variables multi-relate and how we can extract knowledge and recommendations and management systems for the grower. So going a little bit deeper on the kind of raw material that we use in artificial intelligence, our raw material is data. So again, we use data coming from the farms, historical data that supports the training of the models. And the location is very important because we extract a lot of information out of the location of these farms. And we use also open data like weather data coming from the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, ERA 5. This is very interesting because they do long-term weather forecasting. We are not interested in meteorology, we're interested in climate. We're interested in effects, climate effects that happen not for the next days, they happen for the next weeks and months. So we need those kind of forecasting that prevent how the climate is going to affect the crop, because the palm oil tree has a long cycle during the year, during the seasons. So it's not what is happening today or tomorrow, it's what is going to happen in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. This is important for the models. We calculate anomalies out of all the data that we extract from these public sources, like data like wind, speed, direction, temperature, humidity, rainfall, radiation. All that is important. But it's also very important to use all the information that the NOAA from the United States provides related to the ENSO, the El Niño, La Niña, the effects in the Pacific Oscillation. This is quite important in the Pacific, in both sides of the Pacific, as you perfectly know. So we use also this kind of information to be integrated in the modeling, in the training of the model, to have that knowledge and to be able to relate those weather situations with the yield at the farms in specific locations, but also the forecast that those data sources provide us in order to create predictions in those models. Finally, we use also open data coming from spectral indexes from satellites. We use public satellites that provide probably, as we have seen in the presentation before from Brittany, which is very interesting, by the way. But we use other sources, public, that have less resolution for sure, but quite enough for the indexes, numerical indexes that we extract. So we do not use the image, we use the numbers that the satellites provide us. The resolution that we are using with these public sources is 10 meters per 10 meters. It's enough for this kind of crops. Probably it's not good enough for other kind of crops, but for forestry, it seems to be good enough. Those indexes, and we use more than 5, 6, sometimes 7 or 8 different indexes to be integrated as an input. And not all the indexes are always taken by the model as important variables. It depends. So we put in the model all available data, and it's the model, our genetic algorithms, they are the ones that select in each particular case which ones are the useful inputs for the model. So explaining a little bit more about the 2 targets that we consider for improving sustainability in palm oil sector. First, yield improvement. This is quite interesting because small growers in different areas in Malaysia and globally and not everyone produces at the same level of yield, and it depends on varieties. It depends on the conditions, the local conditions at farm level, geographical, weather. It depends on the management for sure. So we are going to use all the available data in order to extract that knowledge and know which are the best practices in order to recommend those best practices to all the growers and stakeholders. So we will know who do things better in certain conditions, because it's not only management, it's how you manage in the conditions that you have. And then we can extend that to other conditions, other growers, and increase in general the production in a particular region. And we can do also predictive analytics and say, okay, you are going to produce that much using these management recommendations, and with the conditions, external conditions that you have, you are going to produce that much. So you can go and talk to the mill and say to the mill, okay, I'm going to produce that much. Then you can also negotiate the conditions in which you are going to be providing your oil or your fruits in the supply chain. And the mills can also use that. Those associations that integrate different stakeholders or mills, they can use the information in order to know how much they're going to receive in that during the season, in different weeks, different months, from different areas producing and supplying the mill with the fruit. Optimum fertilization, because if we know how you manage your nutrients and how you use water, available water or rainfall, if you have a forecast for the weather, then you can optimize how much you have to apply in the crop in order to optimize the final yield. So depends when and where you apply and how you apply your inputs, then you're going to achieve more or less yield and use less resources to reach the maximum yield that your farm is going to produce in that season. So we can also use those recommendations to increase the oil potential per field. And at the end, more oil per hectare means more sustainability, and less inputs per hectare, chemical inputs and water, means more sustainability. Those graphs at the right side of the slide show our platform Palmia, which is palm artificial intelligence used in the sector. We integrate in these platforms all the inputs and all the outputs of the model, and we geolocate the results coming from the models and provide the prediction graphs to the user so they can manage all the inputs again and the recommendations and predictions of the particular farm. The second target is the predictive pest and disease management. Well, we can use all the monitoring data that is used at local level in the farms to control pests and diseases. And again, with all the public databases that affect the progress of those pests and diseases, and use that to train models that are able to anticipate, even at 1, 2, 3, and 4 weeks ahead, how the pest risk is going to evolve. So the pest and the disease pressure per farm, per hectare, as you can see in the map. This is an example for trees in Spain. It's not palm oil, it's another kind of trees. So we go at level, parcel level, and we are able to predict in the next 4 weeks how the pest is going to evolve in different conditions. So you can anticipate, because you are monitoring today what is happening, but you don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. And you don't know where you have to apply pesticides or fungicides before and in less amount in order to control the pest before it evolves dramatically. As you know, pests and diseases, they appear and they grow exponentially. So from 1 week to other, you see that the conditions are dramatically changed, and the effect in your farm is very, very bad. So instead of applying when the situation is worst, then anticipate the situation and control the evolution of the pest and the disease if you know when and where it's going to happen. We have demonstrated this in the last 5 years in those 3 orchards in Spain for olive production. That is a different oil. We use in the Mediterranean olive oil more than palm oil, but it's perfectly applicable for palm crops. We have reached an accuracy of 90% in the predictions of the pest and disease evolution. So EC2C is predictive agriculture. This is how we are implementing, or where we are implementing our solutions in the supply chain. We are helping companies to forecast the seed productivity and quality in different crops, and make a forecast of the annual curve when they have just planted. During the season, we implement solutions for yield forecasting and improvement, quality forecasting, predictive pest and disease management, and the optimum fertilization, planification and forecasting. But we also apply our mathematical modeling out of the land. So in the supply chain, when the land is not there, like a mill house, a milling facility, or a commercialization facility in any kind of crop, we are using our models to predict demand, supply and demand adjustment, how the supply and the demand will match in the next weeks and months, in order to know if there is going to be a pressure in the prices, for instance. As a matter of fact, we are making also modeling for price forecasting in both palm oil in Malaysia, the FCPO, and extra olive oil in Spain. And we have already worked with different crops, row crops, orchards, horticulture, fruits, berries. I mean, we are not agricultural company. We don't know about the crops. We know about math. And all those crops belongs to customers that they are willing to know and extract knowledge from the data they have. So we help them to have those modeling for different targets, particularly in high value crops, where they have a lot of decision making to be made in the supply chain. So we help them in order to make decisions both in the production and the commercialization stages. We have already covered about 500,000 hectares in different countries in Europe and Americas. And those are some of our customers that are using our technology for different purposes in the supply chain. And then finally, well, this is well, mathematics in agriculture. That sounds strange, but it's not so strange. I mean, we are in the business from the last 6 years. We have been able to, I mean, we're in the radar of companies and consulting companies that are mapping the technologies available. Of course, they map all kinds of technologies that are able to obtain data, technologies for farm management. But we are there as a predictive analytics technology that, as I explained at the beginning of the conversation, this is at the very end of the roadmap, the technological roadmap. So we need data, but when we have data, we can do this kind of modeling for both predictions and optimization of the crops. And that's all. Thank you very much for your time. And again, up to the organization for the opportunity to explain what we do.
Thank you, Mr. Carrillo, for your presentation. We have come to the third paper. This is a joint presentation by Mr. Anupam Singh, the co-founder and president of 113 Industries Incorporated, USA, and Ms. Jenna Monosalo-Kerr, the director of Insights and Strategy, 113 Industries Incorporated. Mr. Singh is an entrepreneur with over 25 years experience in designing, building, and delivering innovative solutions and services. He co-founded 113 Industries Incorporated in 2010 to help Fortune 500 companies develop and market breakthrough products and solutions. 113 Industries Incorporated combines artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the natural language processing technologies to provide data-driven insight to a long list of clients, including Hershey, Clorox, Colgate-Palmolive, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, P&G, and SG Johnson. Ms. Kerr is a strategic thought professional and has vast experience in inventory management, and visual merchandising, with special focus on understanding consumer buying behavior from an in-store and online perspective. Together, they will talk on a very interesting topic entitled Offsetting and Correcting Public Opinions of Palm Oil and the Palm Oil Industry. Mr. Anupam and Ms. Kerr, the stage is yours and you have 10 minutes each.
Thank you, Dr. Ruslan, and thank you to MPOC for giving us this opportunity. It was fascinating to listen to the previous presentations on how technology is being used to gather all kinds of data and apply it to increasing yields and sustainability for the palm oil industry and the planet. Very interesting. I am going to talk a little bit about data, artificial intelligence, etc., but it's a very different type of application. So what we're going to do is to talk about how consumers look at data. And we're going to talk about, this is all unstructured data or text, images, etc. Type of data, and how we gather that and then analyze that to understand the opinions of actual people who are using the products. So in this case, palm oil. And then we're going to talk about a project that we did to understand the effect of all the information that's out there on the end consumers and how they perceive it. So with that, I'm going to move to the next slide here. Okay, I think we got a little bit of background on who 113 is. I myself also guest lecture at Carnegie Mellon. So I've been using data and natural language processing in particular, which is to analyze free-form text to understand what consumers are saying for many years now. We've done over 300 projects. What we focus on is to look at the voice of the consumer, and we use data that's legally available that we purchase from aggregators. This is all online data. And then we use our natural language processing techniques that are very similar to what you might be used to. For example, if you Google something, the answers that you get are using technologies that are state-of-the-art in natural language processing. We use the same underlying models and same technologies to understand data. And our team is comprised of people that are experts in data science, and then people that are experts in understanding behaviors of consumers and understanding the psychology of the consumers as well. So if you look at, there's many different platforms that are available to gather the kind of data that we process, and they traditionally fall into a category called social listening tools, and there's many of them. You can use them out of the box, and they give you things like the passion, the sentiment, whether somebody, consumer likes a brand or a category, and they give you word clouds and topic volumes, etc. But we go very, very deep. We go behind the scenes to understand what are the behavioral patterns of consumers. What are their compensating behaviors? Behaviors that if you ask them directly, they might not even be able to express to you, but they're exhibiting these behaviors all the time when they interact with a brand or a product. And by understanding these workarounds that they're making all the time to overcome some deficiency in the product, or maybe they want to use a product in a different way than it was designed, that leads to what we call our unarticulated needs. And from there, we develop solutions or ideas. A lot of our clients that are in the CPG space, consumer packaged goods, use our work to innovate or get ideas into new ways of thinking about their current product or category. And we do that all with using technologies. So I'll give you an example here. The sentence on the right, I love my new iPhone X. I'm using new iTunes app to stream the new Taylor Swift album, Thanks Apple. Just one sentence or two sentences here, but it's rich with information. If you think about it, it's talking about the emotions of the consumer who's posted this. It's talking about their behaviors, how they're using an app. It's talking about attributes in that iTunes app that they are also talking. It's talking about the brand. It's also communicating their perception of this brand, this product. And it's talking about specific people, in this case, Taylor Swift. All of this information is in free-form text, and it's available for us to harness. What we do is apply algorithms and models to extract this type of information from any piece of given text. And as you heard in the previous two, there was a lot of excellent work that's being done to use structured data that's available in images, in satellite images, maybe farm data, etc., weather data. We're looking at it from a completely different perspective. We're looking at all the information that people are sharing about palm oil, what their impression is of sustainability efforts that maybe the organizations are doing, maybe the countries, and maybe the brands. And so that's where our focus lies in using these technologies. So this is a busy chart, but I just wanted to express how we have evolved in being able to understand language and text. After all, it's one of the most common ways of communication, and the volume of text that's available to analyze is exponentially growing every day. We started off with understanding text as rule-based grammars. We moved on to statistical methods, some of which for example, Mr. Pedro talked about in data science. And now we're using deep learning or machine learning types of methods where you don't have to have any knowledge of the grammar. You don't have to have any knowledge of the syntax of what is being said, but you just apply large volumes of data, you train your models, and then the model itself begins to understand what's being said. Because we use these models, we can also do this globally. So we can do this in any language across the world. In fact, many of our clients use our products to analyze differences between different parts of the world in how people are communicating towards a brand or a category. And I give you two examples of here at the bottom. I only add half a teaspoon of sugar, and another sentence, add half a teaspoon of sugar, so yummy. Very similar in terms of content, but two extremely different people, if you were to look at them. And we are able to analyze this. So the first person here is more about exercising control. They're adding a half teaspoon of sugar, but they're only adding 1/2 teaspoon. The other one here is also adding half a teaspoon, but they're adding it to add flavor to whatever they were consuming. So they are looking for experience. And we are able to, because of our knowledge of these models and the team expertise that we've built over many, many years now, analyze these differences and these nuances. That leads us to a deeper understanding of consumers and therefore their understanding of a brand or a category or a topic such as sustainability. We also can look at all of this data and then create these diagrams that we call network maps or conversation maps. And here you see one that we did on sustainability. You can see all kinds of different clusters in this map, and they are all about different topics, all related to sustainability. So they go from areas such as denim and textiles to home energy, to rapid climate change, agriculture, beauty, etc. Right? So you can see a vast array of topics. In many of our work, we will analyze millions of conversations to create diagrams such as this, which then leads us to understand each of these areas in much more detail, again, from the voice of the consumer perspective. So I just wanted to mention that even though we are using state-of-the-art technologies in AI and natural language processing, it still takes humans to understand and interpret a lot of this data. And that is very, very important. Much as I automate all the work that we do all the time, I find that our team and their ability to understand the patterns is really critical to understanding the consumer as well. And we'll give you an example of work that we did for MPOC. And the research objective for that project was to really gain a deeper insight into what consumers are truly thinking. No matter how much as a government or as an organization or as a brand we communicate, ultimately the perception that the consumer has could be affected in multiple ways. And it's very important for us to understand all the different views that the consumers have if we're really going to understand how palm oil is going to be sustainable down the future and how people are perceiving the usage, especially from an industry perspective. So with that said, we're focusing more on the thoughts, the behaviors, the perceptions and emotions of the consumers vis-a-vis palm oil. And I'll hand it over to Jenna to take you through a case study of a project that we did.
Thanks, Anupam. And thank you to MPOC for having us here today. As Anupam mentioned, this project was actually done for MPOC through one of their partners in the US. So to overview briefly, you've seen a lot of the technology that we use that goes into creating these really complex projects. But to drill it up to the highest level, what we're doing is we're pulling in conversation that's happening across the web using a complex query or a simple query, depending on the project. And in this case, we were looking at any conversation publicly available from consumers, NGOs, brands, organizations with a mention of palm oil, palm kernel oil, or the palm oil industry. So these mentions were occurring over a year-long period between May 2019 and April 2020. As you can see in the chart on the left, there were a lot of conversations, really rich, deep conversations occurring on Twitter, forum, blogs, Instagram, and then comments and other sources. So this is just the aggregation or the representation of where the conversation's happening. It's helpful because each of these sources plays a very different role in how we're interpreting the data. For example, Twitter is a quick kind of diary for consumers. They'll post a thought or a feeling in real time in order to either interact with a brand, to interact or commiserate over something with their peers, or simply to express their feelings. Blogs and forums, on the other hand, are traditionally a space where consumers are looking for a reaction. They're looking for insight from other users, or they're looking for advice or guidance. So all of these different sources play a different role, and they all manifest in different ways in this top terms used on the right side of the screen. So this is where the artificial intelligence comes in to kind of identify the top used terms, phrases that lead us to identifying high-level themes. As Anupam mentioned before, this is very traditional to social listening research. What our research does is aims to get a bit deeper than that. By looking at the segments, so who is talking about palm oil, how do they identify their preferences and their behaviors, and then how are they actually using the product, or in this case, not using the product? What are their attitudes? How do they view palm oil? How do they view the industry and the effects of the industry on the world or on their food? And then finally, activation strategies. So which segments are actually the highest opportunity for you, and how can you communicate with them based on the ways that they're speaking online, the ways that they're interacting with brands, and the ways that they are asking to be treated as a consumer? One of the largest findings we found was that not all opinions vocalized online are rooted in fact. Simply because somebody's posting online, it does not mean that they're highly informed. As I think any of us would know if we're social media users, there are a lot of really loud and strong opinions online, yet that doesn't indicate an educated consumer. So it's really important using the AI to detect the type of behavioral patterns and the linguistic patterns that identify somebody who might be more educated on the subject versus somebody who is speaking without any sort of knowledge or research into their decision, being reliant upon other people online or their peers around them. So the AI did lead us in a few different directions on what consumers are talking about. And the primary drivers of conversation are advocating against the use of all palm oil, advocating for the use of sustainable palm oil only. And this isn't just telling their peers to use sustainable palm oil, but it's also asking brands to contribute to the industry by only purchasing sustainable palm oil or only putting sustainable palm oil in their products. There's also a lot of consumers venting about products that contain palm oil. So in that same kind of note, you see that conversation happening where consumers are just really bothered by palm oil. They don't know the facts and they don't know how to feel, but they know that they're upset and they're asking brands to react and to change their processes. There are a lot of consumers also just simply asking questions. So this goes back to that uninformed consumer who hears a point or a piece of information from this person, they hear another piece of information from another person, and it's really hard to dissect the truth when you're looking at so much information online. So they're generally asking questions about palm oil, or they're asking about what products do or do not contain palm oil. Using all of this information, we were able to categorize the data and the users in the data to identify segments based on how they're speaking and then their linguistic cues that identify them as one of these 5 segments. What we found was a strong population of consumers who are very vocal online, what we've categorized as the strong voices. And we'll get into the definitions of each of these on the next slide. But you also have a vegan consumer who is also kind of a loud voice online. They tend to populate all of the data sets we're working within. They are very excited about their behavior, their behaviors and their lifestyle, and they're eager to interact with others online. So they're not unique to this data set, but they played an integral role in expressing their opinions and in our understanding of the palm oil industry online. Then you have smaller segments like the inquirer, somebody simply asking questions, the DIY or do-it-yourself creator, and the social standard follower. Diving a bit deeper in, you can see that the strong voice is interesting because they actually represent 2 subsets of consumers. One who is very, very vocal against palm oil, and some who are vocal for sustainable palm oil. So their different attitudes dictate the way that they behave in the industry. Then you have the loud vegan who is really interested in reducing their environmental footprint. They're just trying to do their best to give back and be sustainable. The inquirer doesn't know much about palm oil, but they're eager to learn. They want to make informed decisions, and they are looking to others online, whether they be a self-proclaimed expert or a brand with knowledge on the industry. They're just really looking to gather information. The DIY creator is loving making homemade foods, products free from palm, and they're really motivated by having products that align with what they're already doing, how they're already behaving, so what they believe in. And finally, the social standard follower is somebody who's really easily influenced. So they're very influenced by that strong voice or by that loud vegan, and they're idealistic in their behavior because they want to do everything they can to achieve what they think sounds best or sounds right. So this is where the AI comes in handy. In order to really understand the different segments' attitudes on the subject of palm oil, we're able to use the artificial intelligence and the natural language processing tools to identify how these consumers over-index or under-index on certain emotions. And then at the same time, we're able to plot this on a scale from in favor of sustainable palm to opposed to all palm oil. So as you can see here, we have the 5 segments kind of plotted against these categories, and we see that the strong voice is very in favor of sustainable palm versus the DIY creator who is against a lot of palm. So using clusters that Anupam mentioned earlier in this presentation, we're able to see on the flip side of consumer conversation what NGOs and what corporations are putting out online and how that's resonating with consumers. So you can see here that forest fires, deforestation, impact on animals, recipes, and sustainable palm oil are all huge topics that consumers are looking to interact with and to read about online. On a different scale here, we actually see how these different topics are getting engagement from consumers. So this is marrying up the social data with the published content. And you can see here that something like certification by the RSPO, which Brittany hit on earlier, is something that gets a lot of social engagement, and yet very, and there's actually a lot of published count on it as well. So it's one of those lower engagement but high published count topics versus deforestation and forest fires that really pull on the heartstrings of consumers, and they get a lot of traction online for that reason. So using all of this information, we've come up with a few recommendations that have been put into effect over the past year and a half or so in focusing your communication efforts on those who are more open-minded, and they are more receptive to the idea of pro-palm and pro-sustainable palm messaging. At the same time, recommending that those with a really strong and heavy opinion about negative reactions to palm or negative implications of palm usage are not going to change their mind easily. It would require huge investment and be a very long-term strategy. So the return is rather low on the latter. So focusing your language on sustainable, explore the use of free from language, which is really resonating in the US at this time, and focus on the positive impact of sustainable palm on the environment. And this is just a representation of what we've been doing. This slide deck will be shared so you can read this in depth, but it does show that there have been several instances where certain news stories are seemingly gaining a lot of traction. And so our task over this past year or so has been to just gauge the interest of consumers in order to understand, is this something that consumers really care about, or is it something that NGOs are pushing, or that organizations are really trying to get out there without the true interest of consumers, like this Girl Scout story about child labor in connection with palm oil, and a later story on what the industry was calling Buttergate, where there were some effects of the palm that was in the cow feed and resulting in harder butter. And with that, I'll just finish off with the future possibilities of having AI in our back pocket by passing it to Anupam.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about all kinds of data here. I think we gave you a flavor of what's possible with what I call the unstructured data. And I just want to reiterate for those that are into technologies that this is a field that is growing exponentially. The data science and the ability to look at vast amounts of data is only going to be increasing from here on out. The amount of data available is also going to increase because, after all, we are social people and we like to interact with others. We like to communicate. We make a lot of our decisions based on what we are hearing from others. And so it's very important to understand what's going on in terms of the different channels, different sources that people are listening to, and then making formed or uninformed opinions, as Jenna mentioned. The human analysis of the technology pieces is an integral part of it. We are very excited to have worked with MPOC, and I also wanted to say that those of you who are, concerned about the messaging and about how your brand is perceived, whether you have a product or whether you are advocating for an industry or a category, I think understanding consumers from this kind of lens to see how your messages are resonating and how your brand is resonating is a very important part. We work with a lot of clients that have consumer packaged goods across the globe, the technology that's available to help you is only going to mature a lot more. I would be happy to take on any other questions in the QA.
Thank you, Mr. Singh and Ms. Kerr, for a very enlightening presentation. Our final speaker today is Ms. Justine Wong, who is the F&B manager at Andres & Hauser. Ms. Wong has 17 years experience in the palm oil industry with strong interest in digitalization. Ms. Wong, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for having me here today. For those who do not know who Andres and Hauser is, we are a leading instrumentation supplier with over 68 years of experience. We are based in, our headquarters is in Switzerland. And 30 years ago, we have already set up a sales center in Malaysia and has been contributing to the palm oil sector to reduce the dependency of labor through process automation. For today's topic, we will be sharing on how important these instrumentations actually contributes towards the digitalization, as all this data starts from the bottom, the physical layer, and where this measuring devices is. So we give you all these informations, and you can do all the what you have heard from the previous speaker to do the analysis, the AI and all, to give you a good, make a good decision, yeah, through this data. The information is so much, so you need to process them basically. As all of us also probably know, yeah, there are multitudes of hotspots and challenges faced by the palm oil production sector. We are here, we know, and some of them like data transparency, you know, when you talk about sustainability and all that, you need to be transparent enough, and the consumer wants to know more. They don't want hidden stuff. So digitalization and all this will be addressed in my session here today, which I will share from the point of view in the process automation. So they are in the agriculture, the first one, and then now I'm at the processing side. So what our companies do. So not to forget, of course, there are also many challenges which you can see from the screen here. One of it, which is also quite prominent, is the process contaminants. You can also be addressed with some inline quality monitoring devices, substituting with some lab measurements, which now you might have interval of lab measurements in between, but that might be time consuming, and in between the lab intervals is not continuous, so it's not traceable, it's not transparent. And therefore, with inline monitoring is continuously monitoring, and you can spot on any contaminants immediately. So one example could be like bleaching process in the edible oil, then you might have this bleaching earth presence. So this can be done. Of course, by incorporating technologies across the palm oil production, be it in the mills or in the refineries, productivity can be increased across various stages of each process. The main 4 values towards digitalizations will help reduce downtime, definitely. And with the inline quality measurements which I shared just now, you can also prevent the waste and rejects. And of course, you need to feedback. You are doing a business, you need to know your stock, yeah, your stock inventory management. By having the automated tank gauging, instead of this manual gauging, which is still the currently practicing methods in most of the mills and even in most of the refineries. Why is that safety? That once you invest in all this, your safety is definitely be improved. Not only the process, also the human, the workers. If you need to do a manual dipping, you need to open up the manhole and you have to go into the top of the tank. So that is where the safety is. It's oily, it's slippery, and you can have tendency people falling into those big tanks. And if you open up the manholes, you can also get your product contaminated. So think of things that you can do automated, and you can also get the data from it. If you measure it, you can analyze it, and you can improve and optimize. So of course, at the end, this will definitely contribute you to a very cost-effective use of your resources, especially in times like what we have now. You have limited people, you have to restrict your human distancing and all that. Then you still have to manage your plant. You still have to process the palm oil. You cannot leave it overnight, you know. So these are things that can help you in this way. Digital transformation process is best represented by this digital maturity model in the 6 value-based maturity levels. So how matured are we in the palm oil sector when it talks about going digital? Everybody's have this very hot topic, Industry 4.0. Everybody would like to hop on to it, but where to start? So this is where Andrews & Houses comes in to help our customers where to start, because when you talk about digital, computerization is a must, and all of us already have one. If not, we are not here today, watching today's webinar. But is that enough, that level? So you still need a connectivity. Yeah. You need a connectivity to get it connected so that you are visible. You can see those data. You have it is not enough. You need to see. But once you see it, do you know what it means? So you need people like the 113 industry to analyze this data, to understand what it means. So why is this happening? So you need to understand it. And from there, because at the end, our ultimate goal is to reach here, the Industry 4.0, the predictive and the adaptability level, maturity level. So let's look back into your organization. Do you still record manually? Do you do manual recording in your logbook? If so, that is not digital. Yeah, there are ways now. Put in a measurement, get it connected, get it visible, whether on your phone or locally. So after analyze, you definitely need to, you might see some patterns or trends, which you can do prediction later. But as you know, there are so many. So some of our clients, so we are already in the automation. We have so many sensors in our plant. Yes, there's 40 over millions of sensors installed globally. And over 90% of these sensors are equipped with digital communication. Maybe if you look back, you say, oh, I'm still running on analog, a 4-20 signal. So how am I going to go digital? Not to worry. Of course, all you need is to get this data connected. First, you need to have a measurement, a device to measure. You need to have the communication, get it connected, and make this data visible. So all these data actually holds the key to the new optimizations and value creation opportunities for your organization. So let's unlock this data within your organization. Another way to enhance the data transparency, everybody wants to talk about data transparency. Definitely digitalization is one of the ways to help you. And how can this be supported? Of course, first, you will have the data already on the physical layer, the data, the measurement, the physical world. That's where all your data are collected. The 40 over millions sensors sitting here. And usually all these data are pretty discrete, You might have an organization which is having different premises, different entities at different part of the world, or maybe within Malaysia or within Indonesia or whatever, but you have in different places. So information is everywhere. Yeah. But how are you going to gather all this information to a common platform? So you need to get the data connected to it. And you can actually bring them to the cloud. We have edge devices to help you to do this connection. Then we will come and talk about when you have all the data, that's where the digitalized management outlook, you have 3 layers here. The physical layer is where all the sensing and control, that is where our measuring equipment, the instrumentation sits. So it will do all this control and get your processing on. Then you will deliver this information to the information layer, because you're running a business and you would like to know your costs. Where is it? Where can I save more? So you need this information from the bottom. You measure the steam, for example, and then you know the energy cost. You measure the compressed air, you know the energy cost, and you need all this information. But the most important, ultimately, of course, the business layer, where the value for decision-making and optimization. There are example, for example, like supply chain management. So you produce and you have your stock, your buy stock and all this. You would like to know the mass balance, how much you go in and then how much is produced, and you need to have this complete account, how much losses within the company, and has to be traceable, of course, to the source. So you move the information from your stock of CPO in the mill, then to the refinery, and then to oleochem and all. So you need all this measurement. That's where we help. We also have all these tank gauging, inventory management system, terminal automations and all to help you in this supply chain management. Nowadays, like information, so it's so discrete, of course, you might want to consider these services to get your data visualized, analyzed, so that you can manage. So before you invest in one, always look for this 4 most important things. This is the tips for you. Look for something that is web-based monitoring platform. You will change a laptop very fast now, You don't use it for many, many years. So if you have a software installed in it, you have to update the software, and all this is cost and it's troublesome. And if the computer fails, the server fails, what are you going to do? That's why now everybody is moving into the cloud-based system. Why? Yeah, because we don't want to handle all this physical hardware. Then the next is look at data integration. Now you have your sensors in your plant. You have already integrated into your SCADA. That is the place where you do your control. That's your control. Then you need this to be also sent in further to a common platform where you can get all this information for a better decision making. What you need to do, we can have edge devices like I've shared, to support you in this manner, that we do not touch your automation control process side. We will pass through this and send the information which you have already at the physical layer to the cloud directly. Then the next, look for a very scalable, because your business will expand. Look for flexible, scalable, and intuitive, easy to use, user-friendly kind of system. And last but not least, look for something, because when you have data and you have devices, you need to make sure these data are accurate, and you need to verify them from time to time. Get some smart devices where you can have remote support capabilities. These are some examples to give you some ideas how it looks like for the visualization view of what we have. There's the map view like this. This is the map view, and you can know where your location is. So after that, you can click on here and you will be able to access to the trends, the historical data of your plant. You can also have maybe some engineers might like to see PNID. So now you have to go into the plant, you have to go into the control room to look at it. You can have this on the cloud base, which you see exactly the same, the PID, but you cannot do control. So in times like this, where you have your engineers are not able to go back maybe on a weekly rotation shift, you can also do so and check it at home. Some charts and reports, of course, this is where the analysis plays. If you have all this information, you need some charts to give you an idea to see and recognize some patterns, yeah, what is happening. In terms of operational reliability, you have to make sure, because places that you have your entities maybe are not at the HQ. So you need to know, and towards all these places to check it out. And what you need a reliable remote optional kind of way to analyze or to know the sensor health status of all these devices. Yeah, I will give you two examples. This is one of it, the critical parameter monitoring in remote regions. One of it could be like in the mills where it's very remote, and or maybe you have you are in HQ, you have different refineries or different oleochemical plants. You might want to know the production yields. Yeah, then you have a production flow meters. You don't have to measure it. The meters will do it for you, will upload the data for you and consolidate the data for you for all your entities, all your refineries, all your mills. And you can know in up to date, you have up to date information for what you have in your stock. Another example will be remote effluent monitoring. Yeah, this is a way that you can remotely measure your effluent. For example, like pommer load, pommer discharges, the quality, your biogas production. So these are all very customizable parameters. Just let us know what you need and we can provide you the advice. This is the last one. Of course, I'm glad that I have given this opportunity to share you enough the insight as to how you can kickstart your digitalization journey, and wish you that you have the journey begin with us. You may check it out at this QR code and to see what our client says about us. Feel free to contact us as well. So this is my email and also my phone number. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Wow, there's a lot of data that we are talking about today. Well, we have come to the question and answer session. So as I mentioned earlier this afternoon, we have Mr. Jonathan Ong to stand in for Ms. Brittany. Okay. For the benefit of everybody, what I will do is that I will read the question that was posted in the Q&A options, and I'll go to all the questions that has not been answered live first. But if we have some time, we will try to cover the already answered question, because I'm sure there must be somebody who missed out some of the earlier questions. Okay, the first question goes to Ms. Brittany. Okay, Jonathan, what are the technical limitations that will limit the effectiveness of the system?
All right, thank you, Dr. Ruslan. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. So as Dr. Ruslan mentioned, I'm here to stand in for Brittany, who's actually, she dialed in from the US time, so it's really in the middle of the night for her. So I'm the regional sales manager based in Singapore for Planet. So to your question, what are the technical limitations? So of course, and it was a very enlightening presentations that I've just sat through. Here at Planet, what our main mission is actually to image the entire world every day and provide this, illuminating this change that's happening on a daily basis and make it accessible to all. Now, from a technical standpoint, without getting too much into the nitty-gritty and all that, we're taking imagery from space, and we're doing this every single day. Now, of course, we're taking imagery from distances about 500 kilometers away. So there is only, to a certain extent, you will be able to see in terms of details from the site. So most of our imagery, as you would be familiar with Google Earth, are pictures or imagery taken top down. We have the ability to take at a certain angle as well, at higher resolutions. But of course, we see ourselves, satellite data, as one of the data sources out there. So for us to kind of enable, the industry to move towards more of digitalization using AI to help us, transition into, digital transformation and all that, we see ourselves but one of the data sources. So of course, we rely on other data sources, other inputs, Internet of Things devices that's now deployed, as Ms. Justine has mentioned, millions of devices, sensors out across all the plantations. So all this has to come together to really provide the complete picture. Satellite imagery, we can never claim to be, that we're able to see everything. Right. I hope I'm able to answer the question.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, Mr. Pedro, how suitable is this technology for independent smallholders? Can they run it on their own, or do they require technical support in terms of financial and assistance to run this?
Well, thank you for the question. They can run it by themselves, no problem at all, because this technology is use the existing data coming from the farms, and it's automatically downloaded in the system together with the public data. And the only thing they have to do is to connect to the platform to check results and predictive results. So they don't have to do anything else.
All right. So you mean to say that it's quite easily doable by the smallholders?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Do you need any additional educational background for you to do that?
No, no need.
No need.
If they are able to use a mobile phone, they can use this platform.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Anupam and Ms. Kerr, how does the software monitor inputs from important palm oil markets and strict internet censorship policies and limited global access, for example, in China?
Yeah, I will take that. Thank you for the question. That's a great question. The data that we acquire is from providers that are legally allowed to share that data. Anything that's private or marked private and not available for public consumption is not available in the data sets. And so the data aggregators work with different countries and their regulators to make sure that they are only collecting data and making it available to us that is legally allowed. And we acquire that data from our data aggregators and the platform that we use. We use a platform called NetBase to gather all our data, and they in turn get that data from the data providers. And as you mentioned, there are countries which will restrict the data availability in different ways, and sometimes that changes over time as well. We go back in time to get the data as well, so we can get data about 5 to 6 years back in time as well for analysis. But yes, depending on the regimen and depending on the country's policies, sometimes some data may not be available that was previously available. So that we do run into that in some countries.
Will that impact your accuracy in terms of your interpretation?
That's a good question. If the data is turned off completely, then it would. But usually what happens is some channels or some sources of online information are almost always available in some form or another. So that's a good representation of the wide amount of data that should be available. I mean, if our customers traditionally have been doing focus groups, online surveys, etc. And as you know, if you've done any of that kind of research methodology, you usually are only able to do it with tens of people, sometimes hundreds of people. Our work, we are sampling or we are looking at data from millions of consumers across the globe. So it's usually much higher in volume anyway. So if some of it drops out, we're still able to get sufficient information.
All right, thank you. You want to add in anything, Ms. Kyo?
No, nothing to add. I think Anupam did a great job at answering that.
All right. Okay, Ms. Wong, I think a big part of your presentation is touching on the downstream, right?
Yes.
I think the biggest challenge now is actually on the upstream, especially when we are talking about dependency on manual labor. So how well prepared is the oil palm industry, especially the upstream, to adopt this technology, and where do we stand now?
For the upstream, they say about the meal side. Yeah.
No,
so
we are talking about, I mean, for example, if you talk about, stock take, harvested crops,
No, we are not in that area.
I see. So
Yeah.
you won't be able to give any
No.
advice on that. All right. Okay. But in terms of the downstream, you mean to say that where do we stand? Is it really something that is doable, or is only doable for certain companies that have got the infrastructure?
Yes, even like in the milling, the millers, you can actually start because you produce a CPO, you still need to do some processing. And that's where we can see very, very manual still in all the palm oil mills, most of the palm oil mills. This is where you can start. The refineries are already pretty much automated, but it's just restricted to the plant itself, as into control and to process it. But not so much of getting this data to really analyze and make full use of these big data.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, Jonathan, can the system use issues alerts if there is any deforestation taking place in a particular area that is under surveillance? Meaning to say, can you give a real-time alert on any deforestation that is going on anywhere in the world, or if there is any possibility that you can actually alert encroachment of wildlife, for example, into certain areas? Can you do that?
All right, thank you for the question. So the short answer is yes. So here at Planet, it is definitely very possible, and I'd like to share with you a couple of use cases. So here at Planet, we are already imaging the entire world's landmass every single day. So we would be able to detect changes at that cadence. Now, you mentioned the word real time. From a satellite imagery perspective, being able to do it every day, be able to capture new, fresh imagery every day is as real time as you can get from a satellite imagery perspective. Now, and we are in the Southeast Asia region. Our biggest challenge here is always cloud cover. So with this daily cadence of being able to collect the satellite imagery, we have the highest chance of potentially getting a good shot in a given day. Now, so how we are actually doing this is, you mentioned deforestation, you mentioned encroachment, you mentioned just activities that's happening on ground. What are the first signs of this? These are all human activities, and the first signs of this are usually roads being built cut into the jungle to deforest the area. As one of the slides that Brittany has showed, an area in the Brazil Amazon rainforest, over a time period, we're able to show big patches of forest being cut down and like that. Now, we have a working algorithm that we can pick up and do road detection automatically. So we are able to create alerts that, hey, there is a new road that's being built out there in the middle of, a rural place. Now with that, these are early signs already that there is human activity, obviously, that's going on. And from there, you can then investigate. And then that's where the human eyes come in and actually take a closer look and then really understand. Together with this information, you can pass it on to the local authorities or the land concession owners for them to actually take action. And also from an accountability standpoint, our pictures are, they're actually a source of ground truth. You can use that to say, hey, look, who should be responsible for this? How can we prevent this going forward? So the short answer is yes, we are, in fact, the most perfect data set to do this because we are doing this on a global scale.
All right. I've got some extended question on that. Okay, can your technology be applied to, say, for example, precision agriculture, where currently people are monitoring pests and diseases outbreak, for example? Is it applicable using the system that you are employing?
Yes, I'm very glad you asked that question. So in fact, precision agriculture is what we are, investing a lot into. So we are collecting imagery, not just in the visual spectrum. So from a layman's point of terms, we see things in basically the mix of colors, red, green, and blue. That's how we produce all the colors.
Okay.
We are imaging in multispectral. So we are picking up imagery in near infrared, in the different types of blue, greens. Now, all this type of multispectral band imagery can actually mathematically quantify the health of vegetation on the ground. So your health of the palm trees, your health of the forest and all that. So all this can be then kind of reverse engineered and worked out. Hey, is there a problem with pest infestation on the ground? Hey, is there a stress, irrigation stress, not enough water? And not enough water could lead to, many other types of different knock-on problems. Like there could be a possibility where this area is more prone for a fire to occur. The health of we also do that and you can also look at the nitrogen levels of the plants and so on and so forth. So we collect imagery in multispectral band, which you can then use to correlate the health and infer the health of it, any problems, any signs of diseases, pest infestation, etc. And you can then track this holistically at a high level, broad area monitoring on the health of all, the vegetation on the ground.
Okay. One more leading question to that. Okay, in 2019, the Malaysian government announced that they will make public all the oil palm concession in the country, right? So, but if you were to do it, it's going to be taking a lot of time and money. So, how competitive are your services, being offered to let's say, to countries like Malaysia?
Right. That's a very good question. So now everything is always relative, right? Pricing is always relative. And when I say relative, you compare this to, say, the Western worlds where, from the term that you use, precision agriculture. So a lot of the farmers are really employing techniques using IoT devices, satellite imagery, aerial surveillance, drones to already integrate into their current workflows, work streams, to kind of give them a full understanding all the way from the upstream down all the way to downstream, the entire supply chain. What is the carbon footprint? How efficient is the whole process? Now, that is very developed compared to our part of the world. Now, in our part of the world, a lot of the techniques, through experience, it is still very legacy based, where you send people out in the field. Now, realistically speaking, how large an area a team of people on wheels can cover, right? And then these reports may or may not be as reliable. So coming back to the point, the cost of satellite imagery right now, when we do an actual cost analysis, we are when you really put things into perspective, at least one order or even two orders of magnitude cheaper and more cost effective from a broad scale standpoint, rather than sending people out in the field, investing in drone technology, investing in aerial surveillance and all that stuff. We are able to do it at scale and on a daily basis. So in terms of price competitiveness here at Planet, that is really my job. When I speak to potential customers, I kind of ask them, now, what is the problem you are trying to solve? And then we quantify that. Now, with this investment, obviously it's going to be an investment. Any new technology, there has to be a certain investment it's going to make. But we always try to say, look, when you invest in this, what would the returns look like? How can you then repurpose your workforce, repurpose your resources to then tackle the problems that really help move the needle, rather than the existing techniques are very resource intensive and not effective. So in terms of pricing, we always try to do, and our mission is really to use space to help life on Earth. And we always try to be as competitive as we can to make sure to consider all the factors on the ground there. So, I'm very happy to take any more further questions. Please reach out to us at sales@planet.
Okay,
Thank
to
you.
be fair, to the other panelists, I'll ask Pedro. Pedro, even though this question was answered online, but I think for the benefit of people who might miss the answers online, I'll read it for you to share the answers. Okay. Would it be possible for the AI utilized by your company to be biased against certain crop? Is it possible? Then how sure are we that the data analyzed by your company is not biased? Is there a third-party AI available to audit the result?
Well, thank you for the question. It's quite interesting. Yes, well, our modeling is made specifically for each crop and each farm. So even if we are talking about the same crop, in this case, palm oil, different farms located in different locations and with different management and with different data, with different circumstances, they have different models. So the models are adjusted with the existing data that correspond to a precise location, a precise farm. So there is, in that way, we avoid the bias between different modeling crops and farms, etc. And the way to check that the results are good enough is quite easy, because we make predictions, so we can check if the prediction is good when the harvest is made, or when the pest is controlled or monitored again, etc. So this is how our customers check the performance of the models. And at the end, another way to check the performance is when the customers make decisions based on that information. At the end, we anticipate information. And if information is accurate, they make better decisions. So they check that when after making the decisions, they realize that the return in the farms and the improvement that they have in the P&L and in all the economics and the sustainability records in the farm improves. And this is the best check that we can do.
Okay, so I mean, it is possible to have a third party to double check the outcome of your analysis.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Okay. All right, Mr. Singh. Okay, and Ms. Kerr, looking at your list of clients, I think you have got very big clients, right? And one of the things that the oil palm industry is facing is that we have got strong voice, which is actually controlling the internet, the news on the internet. So do you have any similar experience with the long list of customers in your years of dealing with them? And if you have, how do you assist them in handling to change the mindset of the public opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is yes. We do this in a number of categories where there are some kind of headwinds, would be the easiest way to put it, for brands and companies. We work in the chocolate industry. We have several clients that have worked, and as you can imagine, in the coffee as well. So some of the issues that we talked about here that may be pertaining to labor, etc., are also challenges, or deforestation, etc., are also challenges in multiple other industries. We work with clients that are in fisheries, so similar challenges there. I think it starts with you really trying to understand, as you mentioned, the strong voice versus the others, and who are maybe amenable to hearing your voices, who are more analytical rather than just following blindly to what someone else is saying. Once you identify those different constituents in your category, then the messaging can be crafted individually for each, because we know where those voices are, where they go, where their sources of getting information are. So that is where you can use your precious dollars much more effectively, instead of trying to blast one kind of message that is going to go unheard for. And I'll leave it, and I'll ask Jenna to, since she works on this all the time, to maybe add to this. Jenna?
Yeah, I think that was a great answer, Anupam. I would just add that there are queries that we can build to isolate consumers based on the way that they're speaking. And some of the tools that we have can actually find similar ideas, similar thoughts based on the use of natural language processing and machine learning. So for example, as Anupam showed, if somebody says, I love palm oil, I think it adds such a great flavor, we can find the other ways that they're saying that other consumers are saying it, and then build what are called themes or clusters of individuals with shared ideas or beliefs. So then using that information, you're able to better target based on the way consumers are speaking. We can actually pull the domains, as Anupam mentioned, the sources. So for example, one really interesting and great addition our tool has made over the past year is giving us specific Reddit threads where users are targeting their conversations on forums that are unique to a specific idea, preference, topic online. And this better allows marketers to target their information to somebody who is either receptive or looking to learn information. So those are some of the more beneficial aspects of targeting the information. And then, as Anupam mentioned, learning from how consumers are organically speaking, marketers and brands can actually form their message mirroring the language of consumers, which we know from some of our colleagues' psychological backgrounds. There's a huge pull when brands are mirroring your language from a consumer to actually purchase and be loyal to that brand.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Wong, how secure is a third-party website monitoring system, and what are the costs involved, and what would be the ROI for companies who wish to adopt the system?
Okay. This depending on the request, as I shared, these are all very customizable. So in terms of price, it's really difficult, and you can actually contact us directly. We can better understand your requirements and your needs. Then we are able to actually share with you, on the ROI and also the cost.
All right. Okay. Okay. All right. I think we have slightly less than 10 minutes from now. I think I would like to pose some general questions to the panelists. We would like to listen to some of your opinions on this. Okay. Smallholders has always been the party in need of much assistance to sustain their livelihood. How is the palm oil industry digitalization going to affect them? Are they going to be impacted? If they are going to be impacted, how are we going to assist them? Any views from any members of the panelists?
Well, this is Pedro. Let me share with you the experience that we have had with other sectors in other parts of the world, also dealing with smallholders. Basically, they should be associated in somehow in order to digitalize currently to be competitive. They need to be competitive, but I think that they should not do it by themselves individually, but somehow associated. This is the experience that we have in Spain, for instance, with the olive oil, where many smallholders are aggregated into cooperatives. So they join together and join efforts and finance for getting the best digitalization customized for their needs. I mean, this is not digitalization itself because they have to. It's in order to improve their management and the crops and their incomes. So digitalization, if they do it associated with a clear roadmap and with good partners, joining that, they will have what they need, that is to be more competitive and more sustainable, thanks to technology.
So you're suggesting that for them to be able to digitalize their system, they have to work in groups. They cannot do it individually. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's the experience that we have in Spain for the olive oil growers is like that. Yes, and I think it's perfectly extendable to the palm oil.
I think I do agree with you, because in Malaysia, when we were trying to do sustainability, we have a lot of issues with the smallholders, and yet they are so important, because at least 28% of our land areas are being managed by smallholders. So okay, we will actually convey that. Any other views from Anupam and
yeah, sure.
Wong?
I have a comment on that. So
Yep.
adding on to Mr. Pedro's point, the fact that we are really at the cusp of digitalization, transforming the entire industry right now, the reality is that from a smallholder farmer, there is still a pretty high or significant barrier to entry in terms of adopting such technologies. But really the good thing is, what we're observing today, that there are a lot of startups, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are actually developing solutions, seeing that, hey, there's so much different types of opportunities out in the market, so many types of different data streams, and really, from a data aggregation standpoint, be able to launch viable platforms and products that can actually reach out to such smallholders. So an example would be, there is a company that we're working with is trying to create a Facebook of such, where it's really a platform for all the smallholder farmers to come onto one place where they kind of share how the harvest process is like, what's the output is like, and then we're trying to work with them to provide that daily satellite imagery, and together with agronomists, weather forecast data, kind of let individual smallholder farm know when would be the best time for you to plant your seeds, how much water you need to provide, fertilizer amount, and so that they can all streamline the entire process. So there are a lot of such initiatives out there in the market, and we are really trying to do our best to try and support these startups, incubators type of companies that really kind of bring these kind of solutions to the market and make it easily accessible, especially to the smallholder farmers.
All right. Anything from you, Mr. Anupam or Ms. Wong?
Yes. So from my side, I will probably share on the downstream, whereby in the small millers, the private millers, they are also grouping together to share all this experience, how to get things automated. With now everything is running so manual. We do help all these private millers to work on a solution, a simple solution, cheap and yet workable, so that they can resolve a certain part of their processes during processing the CPO, and they can actually multiply the same, and they can get also a better price, because they also have associations that group together, and they can actually learn from each other.
All right. Anything from you, Miska? No? Okay. Right. This is a very, you see, Malaysia has been, competing with Indonesia as, the two biggest producers of palm oil. So when you talk about digitalization, to your knowledge, how far are Malaysia ahead of Indonesia, or Malaysia behind Indonesia? I mean, it's good for us to know, so that we can benchmark our progress, and we need to do what we need to be done. Any idea on that? No idea. No. All right. I think we have come up to the end of today's event. We hope that everybody had a fruitful discussion. we would like to inform everyone that today's presentation will be made available on MPOC website very soon. Once again, on behalf of the Malaysian Palm Oil Council, I would like to thank all the speakers for their excellent and interesting presentation. We would also like to thank all the participants for your active participations, especially in the Q&A session, and for staying until the end of this webinar. And I would like to thank the MPOC team for making this webinar possible. Finally, MPOC, through our Science and Sustainability Engagement Series, we will continue to organize webinars from time to time to enhance our public awareness on health benefits of palm oil to human and on issues related to environment conservation and sustainability. On that note, our collaborator, IChemI POPSIC, will organize a webinar on the 4th of October from 6:30 p.m. The CEO of MPOCC, Mr. Hafiz, will talk on Malaysian palm oil sustainability certification effort through MSPO, getting the right fact on palm oil. And also, MPOC will organize pointers from 18th to 24th of September 2021. You can log in on at www.pointers.org.my. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you to the speakers, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To all the speakers, thank you, and all the attendees, thank you very much.